In the dark days of the 14th century, Europe was shrouded in the shadow of a catastrophic epidemic, the Black Death. The haunting specter of the plague assumed three lethal forms: bubonic, septicemic, and pneumonic, each unraveling the threads of life with merciless precision. With an estimated 60% of Europe's population succumbing to the disease, it was a calamity of biblical proportions. In today's terms, this would be akin to a staggering loss of 450 million lives. Our journey plunges into the harrowing past, exploring the desperate survival tactics that could have spelled the difference between life and death during the dark reign of the Black Plague. In an era where science was but in its infancy and technology primitive, concepts such as basic hygiene and public health were virtually alien. Yet among the masses there were individuals who, driven by instinct, cleverness, or the whims of fortune, navigated the lethal currents of the pandemic. Our narrative is woven not of heroes or miracles, but of stark pragmatism and the instinctual will to survive. Understanding the nature of the contagion is pivotal. The pneumonic plague, a sinister airborne assassin, spread its dark wings through the droplets expelled by the coughs and sneezes of the afflicted, a veritable death sentence in the densely populated warrens of medieval urbanity. The bubonic variant, however, embarked on a more insidious path, transmitted by the bites of fleas that had feasted on infected rodents. These fleas, voracious and indiscriminate in their appetite, were unwitting harbingers of demise. Amidst the ravages of the plague doctor's costume emerged as a haunting symbol of 17th century medicine. The attire, which included a beak-like mask filled with aromatic substances, a wide-brimmed leather hat, and a full-body garment, was first detailed by Charles de Lorme in 1619. This ensemble was thought to protect against miasmas, the invisible bad airs, believed to carry the plague. Delorme's design drew from soldiers' attire a full covering of Moroccan goat leather, envisioned to shield against the deadly contagion. The beak, packed with protective herbs like camphor and mint, was a filter and a barrier. The plague doctor's glass-eyed mask and leather suit became the era's defensive bulwark against the unseen enemy. The costume's history intertwines with cultural imagery. Italian theatrics later adopted the bird-like visage as a symbol of death, underlining the public's dread. Even Jean-Jacques Monget, in his 1721 treatise, depicted these doctors in their morbid regalia, a testament to their grim role during outbreaks such as the Naples Plague of 1656. The plague doctor, often the last sight for the dying, was both an omen of doom and a figure of desperate hope, a duality that reflects the human condition during one of history's darkest chapters. To evade death's embrace during the Black Death, one would have found it prudent to abandon the crowded cities. These urban centers were fertile grounds for the transmission of the plague, with their filthy byways and squalid living conditions. Eschewing populous gatherings and locales was akin to reducing the likelihood of inhaling the deadly bacteria or becoming a feast for the plague-bearing fleas. Social distancing, an unrecognized term then, might have been an inadvertent lifesaver. During the devastating sweep of the Black Death across Europe, different regions adopted various strategies to cope with the onslaught of the disease. In Milan, one of the most notable and ruthless tactics was implemented under the aegis of the city's rulers. Historical accounts, particularly those of the Florentine chronicler Matteo Villani, shed light on the Milanese response to the plague. When the first cases of the plague appeared in Milan, the city's ruling Visconti family took severe measures. The Visconti were a powerful Italian noble dynasty that dictated Milanese policy with an iron fist, particularly during the reign of Luchino Visconti. Under his command, the city undertook an extreme approach to quarantine. As Villani recounts, when someone in a dwelling fell ill, the house was immediately marked, and all occupants, sick or healthy, were forcibly sealed inside with the infected. This policy did not discriminate between the wealthy or the poor. It was applied universally. The doors were locked and sometimes even walled up, ensuring that no one could leave or enter, effectively turning homes into tombs for the living and the dead alike. Food was delivered to these houses, but the situation for those within was dire. The severity of this measure can be further understood through the works of other chroniclers such as Gabriele de Mussi, who highlighted that Milan was one of the few places where the nobility suffered as much as the common folk due to the inexorable application of the law. Despite the horror of such an approach, the historical outcome suggests that it was brutally effective. While cities like Florence and Venice were losing a vast proportion of their populations, Milan's death toll was significantly lower. Contemporary records indicate that whereas places like Florence saw death rates approaching or even exceeding 50%, Milan managed to keep its mortality rate around 15%. The swift and merciless containment policy likely prevented the mass gatherings that would have fostered the spread of the disease, especially since the pneumonic form of the plague could be transmitted through the air between humans. Milan's harsh measures demonstrate a grim but pragmatic side of medieval public health policy. While the ethics of such an approach were certainly questionable, the city's survival rate was a testament to the effectiveness of stringent containment policies in the face of an overwhelming epidemic. The Milanese response, though it came at a great human cost, contributed to a body of knowledge that would shape public health strategies in the centuries to come. Within the echoes of nursery rhymes, some hear the vestiges of plague's dark legacy. Ring around the rosy, a seemingly innocent verse recited by children, is shrouded in macabre speculation. A circle of rosy, a rash perhaps, emblematic of the Black Death's cruel mark, whispers of hidden truths. Little hands clasped, dancing in a ring, might well mimic the unity of doomed souls, while pocket full of posies suggests a desperate clutch at sweet-smelling herbs to mask the omnipresent stench of mortality. The chilling conclusion, ashes, ashes, we all fall down, could hark back to the cremation of countless bodies, or the mass falls of communities ravaged by the pestilence. Yet scholars contest these grim illusions, arguing that history has perhaps been read into childhood's chant after the fact. The pestilence also cast long shadows over the medieval church. The relentless scythe of the Black Death cared not for the piety of those it cut down. Clergy and commoner alike fell in scores. The sheer impotence of the church against this unseen enemy chipped away at the bedrock of faith, giving rise to fringe zealots like the flagellants, who marched through the streets in bloody penance, proclaiming the plague as divine retribution for the sins of mankind. The aftermath of this decimation was not solely of death, but of transformation. As Europe's population thinned, the survivors found themselves in an unfamiliar world where their hands, the hands of laborers, held new power. The scarcity of workers turned the tables on the feudal lords. Serfs and commoners, once bound to the land, now leveraged their indispensability for better wages and conditions, planting the seeds of a societal upheaval. From the ashes of the Black Death arose a new economic order, one where the labor of the many would no longer be taken for granted, catalyzing the slow death of feudalism and the rise of a wage-earning society. In Italy, the tale of the Beccamorti, or dead bearers, epitomizes the grim measures of the time. These individuals, already touched by plague and thus with nothing to lose, were consigned with the task of clearing streets cluttered with the dead, diminishing the likelihood of disease transmission from the lifeless. Yet such was the plague's dread that these bearers of death often spiraled into larceny and homicide, preying upon those laid bare by vulnerability. In this period of fear, some found solace in the alleged protective powers of fire. Pope Clement VI, heeding his physician's counsel, insulated himself with a ring of purifying flames, a deterrent against the vermin and their fleas. Remarkably, he survived the plague, lending weight to the purgatorial potency of fire, a notion that would later see its most grandiose enactment in the Great Fire of London in 1666, an inferno that cleansed the city of the rodents that harbored the disease. Through the years of despair, the bizarre became commonplace. Physicians, initially overwhelmed by the plague's virulence, eventually adorned themselves in leather overcoats and masks, the latter bearing a peculiar beak-like shape and stuffed with aromatic herbs. This attire, strange to the eye, fulfilled a twofold purpose. The leather was a barrier against flea bites, and the herbs were believed to ward off the malignant miasmas thought to carry the pestilence. Flagellants, too, traversed the lands, scourging themselves and others in zealous supplication for divine mercy. Yet their processions did not bring deliverance. Instead, they propagated the plague as they moved from town to town, a dire warning against misguided acts of penitence. The discussion of survival during the Black Death would be incomplete without mentioning the quarantines. Venice was a pioneer in this strategy, imposing an initial 30-day isolation for ships, which was later extended to 40 days, quaranta in Italian, hence the origin of the term quarantine. While these measures did not stop the plague, they mitigated its velocity, granting valuable time. Certain cities emerged as models of order amidst the chaos. Pistoia, for example, enacted stringent regulations that governed trade, travel, and public assembly. Despite their efforts, the city was ravaged, losing 70% of its populace, a stark reminder of the plague's ruthless ferocity. In this era of fear, the random nature of the plague instilled terror in the hearts of all. Yet some discovered that robust health was their best defense. Nutrition, hygiene, and a strong constitution seemingly provided some measure of protection, as contemporary research suggests. The mere act of maintaining one's health could have tipped the scales toward survival. The cold clasp of winter became an unexpected ally. The plague's advance slowed with the drop in temperature, with fewer cases reported during the colder months, giving a transient respite from the unyielding progression of the disease. Amidst the myriad strategies and harrowing survival stories, there was a flicker of hope in the form of genetic resistance. The Roma people displayed a remarkable resilience to the plague, an inheritance in their DNA that shielded a fortunate few from the full brunt of the affliction. It was a rare mercy in an age where mercy was in short supply. The Black Death was an epoch of darkness, but also a crucible for change. As the population dwindled, the rigid social structures began to crumble. Serfs, scarce and thus more valuable, began to demand better conditions and wages, leading to social upheaval and the eventual decline of feudalism. This was the unintended consequence of mass mortality, the reordering of society, and the faint stirrings of the Renaissance. Surviving the Black Death was a complex interplay of avoidance, immunity, and sheer luck. As we peer back through the centuries, it is clear that those who lived through the Black Plague were witnesses to one of history's most profound tragedies, and their survival was a testament to human resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. This deep dive into the past provides more than just a historical recount. It offers a lens through which we can examine our present and perhaps prepare for our future. For in the resilience and ingenuity of those who lived through the Black Death, we find echoes of our own struggle with pandemics and a reminder of the enduring spirit that defines humanity. If this narrative resonated with you, do support us. Hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe. Thank you for staying with us to the end. See you in the next video on Plaid Chronicles. Hopefully you will enjoy one of the videos above. Thanks.